This is WFYI News Now. It's September 6th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, the newest member of the Indiana Senate has been chosen. The 60th anniversary of the Beatles' first performance in the state. And health experts worry a growing distrust of vaccines is partly behind a drop in vaccination rates for toddlers.
So we're definitely starting to see, some of the vaccine hesitancy that develops around the COVID vaccine spreading over into the routine childhood vaccines.
Those stories are coming up, but first, Indiana Fever president announced this week she will step down from her role at the end of this season. Allison Barber has led the WNBA team since 2019. Barber plans to help lead the development of a new statewide project to empower girls and women in Indiana through sports, according to a press release. Mel Raines, the CEO of Pacers Sports and Entertainment, says Barber was a tremendous leader for the team, and she, quote, looks forward to watching the positive impact she will continue to have during her next chapter, end quote. Barber's announced departure comes after the Fever head to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. Dubois County Councilman Daryl Schmitt is the newest member of the Indiana Senate. A private Republican caucus chose Schmitt Wednesday night to replace Mark Messmer. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports Messmer left the Senate earlier this year, halfway through his term after winning the 8th Congressional District primary.
Schmitt says a top priority will be driving decisions local. And ahead of a budget session in which taxes will be a top debate, Schmitt told the Republican precinct caucus members that he pledges to visit every local taxing unit in his district, county, city, and town governments, over the next 12 months.
The reason for that is to gain a better understanding so I can represent our views at the state level.
Schmitt says the state needs to focus on getting Christian values into government and schools. Schmitt becomes the 37th current legislator who first joined the General Assembly via private caucus. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
60 years ago, the Indiana State Fairgrounds vibrated with jumping and screaming of fans seeing the Beatles perform for the first in Indiana. WFYI's Samantha Horton reports on a recent celebration of the anniversary.
September 3rd, 1964. Beatlemania took over the state fairgrounds, with Paul, George, John, and Ringo performing 2 sold-out shows to thousands of Hoosiers. A new permanent art installation was revealed to commemorate the historical event. Thousands of Rubik's Cube pieces were arranged to form a portrait of the band members. Artist Corey Hyman says he decided to bring together the world's most popular band with the world's most popular toy.
Getting to combine those two is such a delight. That's what I get such a kick out of, is finding different ways for art to mix in ways that you don't expect.
The event also included an exhibit of Beatles memorabilia for people to peruse, a replay of the concert in 1964, and a Beatles cover band. I'm Samantha Horton.
And for our final story today, vaccination rates for Indiana toddlers have fallen since before the pandemic. As Side Effects Public Media's Ben Thorpe reports, some health experts worry that the growing distrust of vaccines is partly behind that drop.
Before the pandemic, some 70% of Indiana children had received the recommended vaccines by 35 months. The state recommends vaccines for things like polio, measles, and mumps. But so far in 2024, just a little over half of Indiana children in that age group have received their recommended vaccines. Dr. Shannon Dillon is a pediatrician at Riley Children's Health. She says those numbers are concerning.
So we're definitely starting to see some of the vaccine hesitancy that develops around the COVID vaccine spreading over into the routine childhood vaccines.
Dillon says most vaccines require roughly 80 to 90% uptake in order to be protective against the spread of a disease. I'm Ben Thorpe, Side Effects Public Media.
And that's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share. And follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Monday.